News is CNN 10 and Fridays are awesome. A very warm welcome to all of our viewers worldwide. We're so thankful to have you watching this Friday, December 18th. I'm Carl Azus, and what better place to start our last show of 2020 than with the year in review? A couple interesting things happened in 2020, and we're going to have more details on some of these stories in just a minute. But when the year dawned, Australia was in the midst of a historic bushfire season. Tens of millions of acres burned there in the summer of 2019 to 2020. At around the same time, a potentially deadly virus that was first identified in China began to spread, first around the Asian country, then around the world. It would change life as we knew it in many and some unexpected ways. An international shortage of toilet paper and other paper products. The advent of working from home for many. And it led to the U.S. government passing a package worth $2 trillion, a record amount of money to stimulate the American economy. Before the year was out, there'd be another push for more spending, and Congress was debating a new stimulus package as we produced this show. The summer saw civil unrest in America. Protests, marches, and calls for changes followed controversial encounters between police and African American civilians. Some of the demonstrations were peaceful, some were violent, with cars and buildings being damaged and stores being looted. The wildfires that flared up in California this summer and fall were the most extensive the state had ever seen. They burned more than 4 million acres before they were contained. The Trump administration oversaw several historic peace agreements involving the nation of Israel and 4 other countries in Africa and the Middle East. And by December, less than 11 months after the coronavirus pandemic arrived in the U.S., a vaccine was approved for emergency use when no other vaccine had ever been cleared in less than 4 years.
2020 vision describes seeing things normally, but what happened before our eyes this year was in many ways nothing like we've seen before. Consider a global pandemic growing worse with surging U.S. cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. A presidential election with a conclusion.
They've delivered us a clear victory.
But not a concession. And wildfires, winds, plus the most active Atlantic hurricane season on record.
It's been a record-breaking, very busy season in 2020.
These stories could have defined 2020 on their own, yet they had plenty of company, beginning just 3 days into the year. President Donald Trump ordered a drone strike to kill top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani.
He was planning a very major attack, and we got him.
Iran called it terrorism and attacked bases housing U.S. forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. A California helicopter crash in January shocked the world.
As the chief indicated, there were no survivors.
Retired Los Angeles Laker Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter Gianna died in the crash with the pilot and 6 more passengers on their way to Gianna's basketball game. Women often took center stage. The loss of trailblazing Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to pancreatic cancer, the appointment of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the election of Kamala Harris as the nation's first female and Black and South Asian vice president. Yet the pandemic was always present. Unemployment jumped with jobs gone. Concerts canceled, cruises, Broadway, the Summer Olympics. When some sports resumed, athletes played in front of small or non-existent stadium crowds. People wondered, when would they see crowds again? In May, they found out. Cameras captured Minneapolis police arresting 46-year-old George Floyd. For nearly 8 minutes, now former police officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck, even after Floyd became unresponsive. Chauvin and 3 other officers now face charges related to his death. The renewed calls for racial justice, which started with Floyd's death, continued. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, more tragic deaths that fueled a movement.
In America, you can peacefully assemble.
Black Lives Matter Plaza took shape in Washington, D.C., while Civil War monuments came down in Richmond, Virginia. The nation lost civil rights icon Congressman John Lewis, 55 years after Bloody Sunday, when he began his quest for equality. He took his final trip across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in his casket during a weekend of events celebrating his life.
Ignition. Liftoff.
The space program took off in new ways in May. SpaceX marked the first successful commercial launch, taking 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil. 4 more astronauts went to the ISS in November, and people of all ages decided it was time to try TikTok. The Trump administration ordered the Chinese social media platform to find a U.S. owner, while millions kept using it. The app says this video got a record 528 million views, perhaps for people needing to take a break from watching all else 2020 had to offer. I'm Nadia Romero reporting.
10-second trivia. Who recorded the best-selling U.S. musical single of all time? Taylor Swift, Bing Crosby, Michael Jackson, or Elvis Presley? According to Guinness World Records, Bing Crosby's White Christmas is the best-selling single in the U.S. and the U.K. Irving Berlin wrote it, the movie Holiday Inn featured it, it sold an estimated 50 million copies worldwide after its release in 1942, and the timing of that release aided in the song's success because so many U.S. troops were away from home, dreaming of a white Christmas while they fought in World War II. But is a snow-covered Christmas landscape just like the ones you used to know? And where in America is the weather guaranteed to cooperate? CNN 10 contributor Tyler Malden explores the science behind the scene.
Nothing says Christmas more, Carl, than watching snowflakes fly while opening gifts on Christmas morning. But just simply seeing it snow isn't enough to call it a white Christmas. According to NOAA, there has to be at least an inch of the white stuff on the ground on December 25th to receive the title. If you're dreaming of a white Christmas, history says there are certain places you want to be. Based on the 30-year average from 1980 to 2010, your best bet of seeing more than an inch of snow on Christmas Day in the lower 48 are areas such as Maine, Minnesota, upstate New York, the Rockies, Sierra Nevadas, Idaho, and the mountains of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Basically, you want to be in the mountains or near the U.S.-Canada border. Aspen, Colorado is one of about a dozen cities with an almost 100% probability. Steamboat Springs sits at 98%. Surprisingly, New York City only has a 12% chance, and Miami has never seen a white Christmas. But these are the historical odds. An early look at next week's weather pattern, Carl. Models suggest the treetops will glisten for many of us, with a breakout of frigid air from the north and a couple of winter storms possibly impacting the country.
Snow or not, 18-year-old Tyler Kamholtz recently lit his car up like a Christmas tree. It's beginning to look a lot like Camaro. His father, a retired police officer, was not impressed because he says he knew it broke the law, and Tyler was pulled over, though the state trooper only gave him a warning and took a picture. Tyler is allowed to keep the lights on the car, but he can only turn them on while driving on back roads. Forget the halls, y'all. It's time to deck the cars. Where there's a wheel, there's ways to win the holiday light wars. Clark Griswold's bright idea made a house all that it can be, but Tyler's car can make the neighbors red and green with envy. The haters want to cover it. They can't get Camaro over it. Admirers all lover it. Their smiles hover over it. He strings along a colorful car full of Christmas cheer and hopes he doesn't see blue lights behind again this year. That almost wraps our show for 2020. Want to give a quick shout out to Plattsburgh High School in Plattsburgh, Missouri for subscribing and leaving a comment on our YouTube channel. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. We look forward to seeing you again on January 4th. Thank you for the gift of being the best audience in news. I'm Carl Azus for CNN.